Predicting the future is incredibly hard.
The automobile is only a novelty. The horse is here to stay.
There is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home.
Heavier-than-air flying machines are impossible.
Today I'm going to show you something incredible. A book written in 1857 that made very accurate predictions about science, history, and where we're going as a species. And pretty much every single one has come true. One was just proven accurate in 2023. And at the very end, I'm going to show you two predictions that have yet to come true that are probably the most shocking of all. And just so you know, I said this book was written in 1857. I was unable to find a good scanning of this online, so I'm using one from 1860. So my predictions are about 3 years off, but they're all still really accurate and very amazing. Molecules have shape.
Do molecules have a specific shape?
Yes, molecules have a specific shape, but it's beyond your ability to perceive it.
Is their shape always the same, or can it change?
The shape of basic molecules never changes. However, the shape of secondary molecules that combine these basic ones can change.
In 1857, the shape of molecules was still hypothetical. Scientists first theorized that molecules have fixed 3D shapes in 1874, so 14 years later. But this wasn't proven true until X-ray crystallography around 1912. And it wasn't until 1932 that scientists showed larger secondary molecules can change their shape, just like the Spirit said. But then it added something even more incredible.
Also, what you call a molecule is still far from being the smallest, most basic building block.
In the 1860s, people thought molecules were the smallest thing. Some people confused it with the word atom. Atom and molecule, they hadn't really decided which word to use, but nobody thought there was anything smaller than a molecule, or than an atom. It wasn't until 1897 that the electron was discovered, 1911 and 1932 that protons and neutrons were discovered. Later, the discovery of quarks, 1964, showed that even these particles have smaller components. So this prediction wasn't just about chemistry, this is coming up on modern particle physics, something that didn't come around for 100 years. Solidity is an illusion.
How can someone in a trance see through solid objects?
No object is completely solid or opaque. Only your physical senses perceive it that way.
Now that was an incredibly bold statement, but X-rays were able to show 35 years later that no object is completely opaque. We can see through things. People were so sold on the whole solid idea that there was a few people that were like, this has to be a hoax. There's no way this can be true. Ernest Rutherford's gold foil experiment in 1909 showed atoms are mostly empty space. So nothing is actually solid, it just feels solid to our senses. Transparency depends on structure.
Does this mean that matter only has two main properties, force and movement, and everything else comes from how they interact?
That's correct. But you also need to include how the molecules are arranged. For example, a material that is opaque can become transparent and vice versa, depending on how its molecules are arranged.
So in 1860, nobody understood why glass was clear and wood wasn't. Scientists wouldn't explain this until the 1920s and 30s, with quantum mechanics and electron band theory. That's 70 years ahead of science. Both sand and glass are made of the same silica molecules. The difference is how those molecules are arranged. Glass is disordered, so light passes through it, making it transparent, while sand's crystal structure scatters and blocks the light, making it opaque. So it's true that transparency depends on how the molecules are arranged. Empty space isn't empty.
Is there any part of space that's completely empty?
No, there's no such thing as an absolute void. What looks like empty space to you is actually filled with matter that your senses and instruments can't currently detect.
So in the 1800s, people thought empty space was purely empty. No particles, no energy, nothing. 1927, quantum mechanics shows that the vacuum can't be empty. Experiments in 1948 prove that the vacuum is full of invisible energy. In 1965, they discovered the cosmic microwave background. And then in 1998, they discovered dark energy. So this prediction was 80 to 138 years early. All matter comes from one element.
Is matter made up of one element or many?
It comes from one single original element. The things you think are basic elements are actually transformations of that single original element.
So this idea sounded completely mystical in 1857. Science still viewed elements as constant and unchanging. It wasn't until the development of the quantum field theory in the 1920s and 30s, and later string theory in 1968, that the unity of matter and forces began to be scientifically explored. So, more than 70 years after this book was published, they discovered that it was true. 70 years. Human evolution.
Are modern humans a new creation, or did they evolve from earlier humans?
They are the same spirits, returning in new bodies to improve themselves, but they're still far from perfect. The current human race, which is growing and replacing older ones, will eventually decline and disappear. In its place, more advanced races will emerge. These future races will come from today's humans, just as modern humans evolved from the primitive humans of the past.
In 1860, most scientists rejected evolution. The idea that humans descended from primitive beings was explosive. That went against what most everyone believed. And nobody was saying humans were going to evolve into something even more advanced. So this is shocking because it was 11 years before Darwin published his book, The Descent of Man, which talks about man evolving from more primitive humans. And just because the book was published in 1871, it still took many years for modern science to embrace the idea. The first human fossil wasn't discovered until 1891. So 31 years. And it wasn't until the 1990s with genetic testing that we actually proved that it is true. Multiple human origins.
Did humans first originate in different places on Earth?
Yes, but at different times. This is one reason why there are different races of humans. Over time, people spread to different climates, and new types of humans developed as different groups mixed.
Does this mean that different races are separate species?
No, not at all. Humans are all part of the same family. Think of different types of apples. Just because they look different doesn't mean they aren't all still apples.
This is one of those things when I first read it in the book, I thought, well, this is something that the book got wrong. But then I decided to Google it and I found out this was actually proven true. Just recently proven true, actually, in 2023. And this took over 150 years for it to be proven true. That is so insanely wild to me.
Human evolution is so much more complicated that there were loads of us living on the planet at the same time. Different groups were interbreeding. We have discovered so many more species. Like our family tree got a lot bigger in the last few years. We actually only know the tip of the iceberg of how many human species are out there.
Animal intelligence.
Can we say animals act only on instinct?
That's just a theory. Most animals are guided by instinct. But haven't you noticed that some act with intention? That's because they have a limited kind of intelligence.
Before this, pretty much everyone believed animals were biological machines. They didn't think, they just existed purely on instinct. It wasn't until 1960 that Jane Goodall was able to show that chimpanzees show a form of intelligence. In the 1990s through 2000s, we learned dolphins have names for each other. Crows can solve multi-step puzzles. Elephants can recognize themselves. Even bees demonstrate intelligence. So this was written in a book 100 years before modern science figured it out. Wild.
Jane, you cannot talk about animals having personalities, minds, and emotions. Those are unique to us. Well, I had a great teacher when I was a child, a teacher who had already taught me that what these professors were saying was absolute rubbish. That teacher, many of you have had, was my dog, Rusty. And whether you've had a dog, a cat, a guinea pig, a rabbit, a parrot, whatever it is, you know perfectly well that we are not the only beings on the planet with personalities, minds, and emotions.
Animal communication.
Do animals have language?
If you mean a language like humans have, with words and sentences, then no. But if you're asking whether animals can communicate with each other, absolutely. Animals express much more than you might think, but their communication is simple and focused on their needs.
Some animals don't make any sounds. Does that mean they don't have a language?
They communicate in other ways. Don't humans use gestures and facial expressions to communicate? And what about people who are mute? Animals that live and interact with each other have ways to warn or express how they feel. Do you think fish can't understand each other? Humans aren't the only ones with a language. But while human language can grow and express complex ideas, animals' communication is more instinctive and limited to their needs.
This also was incredibly groundbreaking. In 1857, most scientists thought animal communication was mostly just meaningless sounds. It wasn't until 1965 with Caldwell showed dolphins using distinct whistles to communicate with each other. Carl von Frisch in 1973 got the Nobel Prize for decoding the honeybee dance. Cuttlefish signal with color changes, Hanlon 1988, and fish coordinate with visual and chemical cues. Shivers 1996, proving animals share information without sound. So this is another prediction made over 100 years before modern science figured it out. Men and women are equal.
Shouldn't laws ensure equal rights for men and women to be fair?
Equal rights, absolutely, but not necessarily the same roles. Everyone has unique strengths and should take on responsibilities that suit their abilities. For laws to be fair, they must guarantee equal rights for men and women. Privileges given to one over the other go against justice. As societies progress, women gain more rights, while their oppression reflects a lack of advancement. Gender differences are purely physical. Spirits can be either male or female. Spiritually, there is no difference. Because of this, both should have the same rights.
So this was insane to say in 1860. So this book was written in France, and women didn't get the right to vote in France until 1944. Women couldn't vote in the US until the 1920s. Before the 1960s, a woman in America couldn't even open a bank account on her own. Women are important.
Are the roles women are naturally suited for as important as those given to men?
Yes, and even more so. Women are the ones who give men their first lessons in life.
So in 1860, psychology didn't exist, and women in motherhood weren't respected. So when this book said in 1860 that a woman's role was just as important, if not more important than a man, that was insane to say. In 1990s, neuroscience confirmed early childhood shapes the brain. So again, another prediction about 100 years early. The decline of the death penalty.
Will the death penalty ever go away?
Yes, as humanity continues to grow and improve, the death penalty will eventually disappear. Its end will show how much society has progressed morally and socially. As people become wiser and kinder, this type of punishment won't be needed anymore. However, it may take a long time before that happens.
So at that time, the death penalty was everywhere. In 1860, public executions were still normal. In France, they were still beheading people in 1977. Today, over 110 countries have ended it. I found that interesting. That's a pretty big thing to predict in 1857. Widow burning.
Are women who burn themselves to death on their husband's funeral pyre committing suicide? And will they face consequences for it?
These women follow a tradition and often feel forced to do it, rather than choose it freely. They think they are doing what is expected of them, so it is not the same as suicide. Their actions come from ignorance and lack of moral awareness. As people become more educated and societies progress, these cruel and outdated traditions will disappear.
So this passage was referring to sati in India. Sati was banned in 1829, so before this book was written, but it still continued for over 120 years. The last major incident happened in 1987, and in 1988 it was fully outlawed with very strict laws prohibiting it. So it was accurately predicted 128 years in advance. Eternity doesn't mean forever.
Long ago, people understood eternity differently than we do now. If scholars examined the original Hebrew texts, they'd find that the word doesn't mean everlasting in the way later translations made it seem. When people choose evil actions, they face the natural consequences. But this isn't forever. The sacred texts were meant to show that a time will come when humanity turns away from evil and embraces goodness. When that day comes, pain and suffering will end.
So scholars didn't confirm this till 1947 with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's still a lot of people today that don't know that this is true or haven't looked into it. I sure didn't know about it. I think this is so wild that spirits in this book said, you've actually misinterpreted this. When you actually go back and reinterpret this, you're going to find out you were wrong this whole time. That's wild. Life on other planets.
Are all the worlds in space inhabited?
Yes, and contrary to what many people on Earth believe, they are far from being the most advanced in intelligence, goodness, or perfection. Yet some individuals think they know everything and assume this tiny planet is the only one privileged enough to have intelligent life. Such pride and vanity. They imagine God created the entire universe solely for Earth's inhabitants.
God doesn't create anything without a purpose, so it's unreasonable to think all the other planets were made to entertain us. Earth's size, location, and makeup aren't unique enough to suggest it's the only inhabited planet among countless similar worlds.
So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and if you used to say that you believed that there was life on other planets, you'd be called crazy and be made fun of. The first planet outside of our solar system wasn't discovered until 1995. Scientists now think there's over 100 sextillion planets out in the universe. So I think it's only a matter of time before we discover some of this is true. But go back to the 1980s, even the 1990s, and most scientists would think you're crazy if you believed in life on other planets. Now, more and more people are coming around to it, I think. So this last one is just strange and kind of just for fun. Alien food.
Do living beings on more advanced worlds still need to eat food?
Yes, but their food matches the kind of bodies they have. It's much lighter and wouldn't be enough for your heavier digestive systems. In the same way, they wouldn't be able to digest the kind of food you eat.
Many people that have encountered aliens say they have a really small mouth, no teeth, and have a liquid diet. That sounds incredibly close to what this passage says. Whether you believe in aliens or not, it's a really interesting coincidence. So it really makes you wonder, if it was right about all of those things, I wonder what else it was right about. Because it talks about what happens when we die. What's the purpose of life? What if it's right about that stuff too? So if you're interested and want to learn more, the book is called The Spirits Book by Allan Kardec. It is in the public domain, so there is a free version of the book that you can download for free. Link is in the description. I have a version that I've personally modernized myself. I went through and made all of the words and terminology modern and easy to read. There's a lot of different versions out there online, but a lot of them still use very outdated terms. They call themselves modern, but if you look through the table of contents, you can tell that it's not quite modern at all. They haven't really done anything. My book has no outdated terms and very easy to read modern language. It is the only one out there that I'm currently aware of. So I like to think my version is a modern, easy to read version. An example of something that I changed in the book is getting rid of the term perispirit. Kardec teaches that we are made of three parts: the spirit, the perispirit, and the physical body. The perispirit surrounds the spirit and gives it its form. It's what you're seeing when you see a ghost or an apparition. Using our coffee bean example, each part of the seed has both a technical botanical name and a common everyday name. Most people don't talk about the exocarp, the perisperm, or the endosperm. We just call them the outer skin, silver skin, and the bean. Same thing, two different vocabularies. The Spirit said,
"The specific words you use don't matter much to us. It's up to you to adjust your language to make communication clear."
Kardec had a strong background in botany, so they often spoke to him using botanical imagery. Since most people today aren't botanists, I'm choosing words that instantly make sense to modern readers. The perispirit is the body of the spirit, so I'm choosing to use spirit body in my translation. My version is designed for people who want something easy to read, modern, and instantly understandable. If you want to learn more but you don't fancy yourself a book reader or a book listener, you can subscribe to this channel, turn on your notifications. I'm going to be sharing as much information as humanly possible on this channel within the next few months or even years. Next, I'm planning on making a video about the time a group of scientists accidentally proved that this book is true, that communication with spirits is possible, and that there's life after death. They didn't know they did it at the time, but I'm pretty sure I can prove it in my next video, or at least make a very good argument for it. So if you're interested in that video, make sure you hit subscribe, turn on notification bell, and I will see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.